The ballroom smelled of polish and orchids, banners printed with my name. Founders Tribute, the sign at the door said. I had built the company from pallets and nights with no heat, and tonight was supposed to honor that. But at the head table there were only 6 chairs. We were 7. My card sat bent under a salt shaker like a receipt no one wanted. The host whispered, "We'll make space," and dragged a chair loud enough for the room to hear. Eyes turned, then away. Slides began before the soup cooled. A photo of me in a hard hat. Caption: back when he remembered where he parked the forklift. Laughter, quick, neat, like a door clicking shut. My son lifted his glass. My daughter-in-law read the captions, voice warm as sugar. They called it a tribute. It felt like a rehearsal for erasing me. I had given him the keys to the company. Tonight, he and his wife handed me a chair fetched from the wall and a slideshow that turned my life into a punchline. Laughter still clung to the air when I realized my hand wouldn't calm. I gripped the glass too long. Wine streaked my cuff, the rim tapping my tooth. Another laugh, sharper than the first. Heat rose to my ears. "Let's keep it light for Dad," my daughter-in-law whispered to the MC, as if the slideshow hadn't already gutted me. My son stood behind her, jaw locked, eyes sliding past me like contact would break him. That look didn't just sting, it placed me. On the table, my card read Dad. His read CEO. Paper is light. Titles are heavy. I thought of the day I handed him the company. The pen trembled slightly in his hand, but his voice was steady. "We'll make you proud, Dad." Pride felt solid then. Tonight it felt like sand running out of my grip. 2 chairs down, she murmured again, softer, controlled. "After tonight, we can talk about his stepping back for wellness." Wellness, the polite word for erasure. This wasn't sudden. The cuts had been rehearsed. Meetings moved earlier, I'd arrived to empty chairs. Looping you in, emails dropped after decisions. Reports polished until my fingerprints vanished. Lunch canceled once, then twice. Then silence. Just a postcard left on my sugar jar. Next quarter. Distance dressed as scheduling. Phones away. "Stories up," the MC called. My chest clenched like it used to on payroll nights. Tight, exact. I thought of the warehouse, the place where truth didn't need a microphone. Once, a young supervisor handed me a safety sheet. "We follow this now," he said. My own protocol, handed back like foreign law, and me, wearing a visitor badge. Name spelled right, meaning wrong. Plastic where home should be. A tug at my sleeve. My granddaughter held up her phone, a tiny robot waving. "Look, Grandpa!" Her small weight steadied me. I turned to my son, tried to enter his lane. "How's the new distribution center?" "Fine, great, humming." Adjectives stacked without weight. At the bar, a cousin's laugh. "It's all optics, right?" The quick chorus of agreement stung. Optics. A word that thanks you while sliding you out of the frame. Last spring, I'd learned how easy I was to move. A birthday photo line, balloons tapping my ear. I asked an old colleague for lemonade. "Give us a second," he said, shoulder sliding me aside. By the time I returned, my seat was gone. "Dad, you okay?" my son asked, like I'd wandered into the wrong house. "I'm fine," I lied. I came up this mountain hoping altitude could fix what ground level couldn't. The staff meant their welcome. The room upstairs faced a valley that knew how to hold still. I set my wife's photo on the nightstand, whispered for her to steady me. Tonight was supposed to be a bridge. Dinner warmed briefly. Candles softened faces. Soup tasted careful. Kids laughed about a teacher who said "like" too much. For a moment, I let it hold me. Then the jokes did their work. "The glasses," my daughter-in-law said, mimicking my pinch. A cousin recalled a name I once mixed. Laughter landed fast. I let it pass. Hope is easier to swallow than accuracy. And every time I chose hope over accuracy, I bought the next cut. I walked to the restroom, faced the mirror. A man who needed a barber, not a doctor. "Stand up straight," I heard my father, I did. It helped. Until the door swung and dragged me back. At the mic, my daughter-in-law's smile never cracked. "Honoring the past and embracing the future," she said. Softer to the MC. "No derailments. The board dinner's next week." A cousin's phone glowed. A reel. Me squinting at a lift sign. Caption: "Grandpa forgetting floors." My hand shook. I pressed it against my thigh until the muscle obeyed. "Dad," my son called, voice tuned for boardrooms. "Say a few words. Not to honor me, to frame me." I lifted my glass. The rim clicked my tooth. Wine streaked my cuff again. Laughter cracked, practiced. Heat burned my face. I didn't flip the table. I sat. Linen cooled under my palm. The candle's circle of light was the first honest thing all night. I looked at my son and saw both. The boy asleep after baseball, open-mouthed and careless, and the man now trained to look through me when a brighter surface was near. The months lined up behind him. Visitor badge, postcard, optics, wellness, not random. Strategy. Make the founder ceremonial. Move faster without him. I pulled out my phone, needing something ordinary. The screen blinked awake, a bell icon. I tapped, expecting trash day, pills, something small. Instead, on my calendar, founder's farewell tonight. Morning carried that padded quiet before a storm. Snow pinned the world still. The coffee in the urn tasted like it had stopped trying. I dressed slow, buttoned steady, rode the elevator down. In the lobby, the fire worked without bragging. Kids dragged sleds bigger than they were. My granddaughter waved like a lighthouse and kept running. At my door earlier, the key light blinked red. Again. Red. A housekeeper slowed her cart. "Happens sometimes, sir." Her tone said it shouldn't happen to me. At the desk they asked for an alternate ID, as if I were the problem. I slid the card back. "Try now." Green. Soft click. I told myself not to take it personal. I failed. The host in a vest smiled wide. "Good morning, Mr. Willis. Your table is set." He led me to a corner laid for 6. We were 7. My name card sat pinned under a salt shaker, a thumbprint pressed into it. The server with the calm eyes saw me pause. She fetched a chair, placed it clean. "We'll make space." The legs screeched louder than they should. I felt the room decide my seat was optional, and then change its mind, only because she said so. My son arrived with wet hair, kissed air near my cheek. "Eggs are great," he said. My daughter-in-law called the pastries dangerous and left them untouched. I folded my napkin and stared at oatmeal steaming because it didn't know better. "Ridge Trail after breakfast," I offered. "Wide, good footing. The view will make the kids quiet." A small, trained laugh looped the table. "Dad," my son said, managerial soft, "that trail's a little advanced." His wife touched his arm, the kind of touch that edits. "We booked a carriage ride so we can all be together. Maybe you and I do tea later?" Her smile was lamp warm, light without heat. I nodded. Saying no would have made me the problem again. I drank my coffee black to avoid asking for anything extra. The kids debated cocoa upstairs or downstairs, serious business. "When I was your age," I told them, "hot chocolate was hot water and imagination." One laughed too hard. It felt like tipping the old man for trying. Before lunch, my cousin's boy, camera always up, caught me squinting at a lift sign. Light hit wrong. He clipped it into a reel with a dumb beat that looped one word until it won. Caption: "Grandpa trying to remember what floor he's on." My phone buzzed. Hearts, tears, thumbs. "You're a star," my sister texted. "This slaps," a nephew typed. I replied with a plain thanks and set it face down. I didn't feel old. I felt converted into content. The small blocks stacked higher. "The shuttle just left before you came down, Dad." "At the skating pond. Skates just went out. We can put you on a wait list." In the game room, we already started teams. None of it cruel. All of it cumulative. Easy turns into invisible fast. Lunch came with place cards again. Mine was at the far end by the service station, where trays clatter and sighs collect. My setting missed a knife. I saw it shining at my son's spot. I lifted my fork, noticed the tremor. The soup tasted like someone had bullied onions until they gave up. "What stock is this?" I asked a kid hustling plates. He blinked, lost. "I don't know, sir." Not his fault. He served theater, not food. I tried to connect. "How's robotics?" I asked my grandson. He flashed a video too fast to see. Blur, tiny victory arms raised. I smiled. "Nice color," I said to my daughter-in-law about her sweater. "Thank you," she replied, polite as weather. I told my son a short story about a supplier who tried to raise a price when he smelled fear. I laughed at the end. "We've modernized procurement," my son said, already signaling the check like it owed him. Afternoon brought a sleigh, not a carriage. The runners squeaked on curves, the sound honest. Kids shouted into the white. The white threw it back. My daughter-in-law angled her phone. "Merciful lighting." My son told the driver. "My mother has a sensitive back." Present tense. He uses it sometimes, as if had might make her more gone. The driver asked where we were from. "I loved the city but wouldn't live there," he said. "I loved it because I did," I told him. He nodded like a man who respects a we even when it's changed shape. Back by the fire, people circled bright box games with rules that change while you're still reading. "I'll teach one with just a deck of cards and attention," I offered. "Later," someone said, pointing at a schedule like a passport. Hands bumped me off the cocoa tray. A man I knew by name poured me half a cup, crowned it with whipped cream I hadn't asked for. Old men need soft things, I guess. My granddaughter dabbed my lip with a napkin. Gentle, competent. I loved her for it. I wished I didn't need it. Snow thickened outside, the kind that drifts, heavy but quiet. I sat by the window, listening to boots on wood, low voices warming up. "I love the roast format," a woman in peach told her friend. They weren't talking about meat. The back of my neck cooled like a window had cracked. I reached for my scarf, came back with someone else's. Easy to lose track of what belongs where when you've been moved all day. The music before dinner felt like dissent. I went early. I didn't want to walk into motion. Staff in black moved with calm repetition. The podium waited like furniture sure of its job. At my spot, the cloth held a raised seam. My name card's L wore a careful loop, like someone practicing me. The chair beside mine carried a jacket and cologne I recognized but couldn't place. My hand touched its back. Warm. Someone expected to be right there when it began. I thought about telling the forklift story. The day it died mid-delivery, and we finished anyway with a borrowed socket. Not a lesson. A memory that reminds people what they already know. I turned to my son to whisper, "Keep it light." But he was 5 seats away, nodding along while another man explained something we had built years ago, renamed Shiny. My cousin slid in, phone glowing. "You're trending," he said, grinning. On screen, my face, someone else's caption, pop music softening the sting. "That thumbnail makes me look like my grandfather," I muttered. "The man who saved smiles for people, not cameras." "You're a natural," my cousin said, slapping my shoulder. "Energy of someone who's never lifted pallets at midnight. If you stand near a stage long enough, it starts to pull." I drifted closer. Gravity, not vanity. The MC fiddled with a laptop on a school-grade rolling cart, wires curled like vines. He clicked through a playlist stamped with tonight's date, something labeled Openers. For a beat, the desktop flashed. Icons neat, folders lined like soldiers. Then I saw the one that explained the day. The corners, the polite edits, the cheerful erasures, a slideshow folder, hidden but not hidden enough. Its name grinned at me. Legacy laughs. The lights dipped, softening faces but not intentions. 3 taps on the mic. "A tribute," the MC said. The screen woke. Me younger, Paper cup in one hand, a toddler with my son's eyes in the other. Warm murmur. Before it settled, another slide. Me in a hard hat. Caption in party script. Back when he remembered where he parked the forklift. The laugh came fast and neat, like a door clicking shut. They'd packed the reel tight. Picnics I barely recall. A Christmas tie I should have left behind. An out-of-focus shot of me squinting at a whiteboard. Cartoon bubble. What's my password again? Laughter rolled on cue. My daughter-in-law read captions in a warm, steady voice. We love you. Each love pressed me flatter in the chair. Old wins were relabeled luck. Our first warehouse, concrete, cheap paint, hope, became lucky lease. The banker who once hung up on me clapped like he'd always believed. A photo with the contractor who bought us a month turned into when your plan is prayer. Big laugh. Clever and cruel were sharing a plate. From the bar. Remember his legendary senior moment? Click. Last summer, sun punching my eyes in a parking lot. Lost in the wild, Whole Foods. Then the cousin's reel folded in. Me at the lift sign, pop music chirping. My phone buzzed on the table. The mint I took tasted like chalk. Water was a row of knees away. I stayed still so I wouldn't look like I was running. My son laughed in the right places. When the room dipped, he made a small circle with his finger to the MC. Keep going. He didn't look at me. He looked past me, like there was a scoreboard behind my head. A slide about one of his early calls wore a halo. Mine wore a banana peel. People say laughter is fair. It isn't. It follows the loudest story. Tonight the story said, he used to be something. Now he's a seat. Heat climbed my ears. I smiled to keep from feeding them more. Next slide. The handoff, my hand on his shoulder. Caption. Passing the torch, before bedtime. Gentle chuckles. Then my first car, the door that needed persuasion, when just jiggle it was a business plan. Applause. I saw my granddaughter look from the screen to me and back. A small crease formed between her brows. No line of mine could iron it out. They went for the jugular with tidy edits. Caution became cowardice. Patience, dithering. Saying no to a slick contract turned into missing the wave, complete with stock wipeout. Keeping a supplier through a tight quarter by extending terms became, don't worry, he'll forget to invoice. I heard my old line, pay on time so people sleep, and knew it wouldn't make a slide. Another hit. The email where public lost a letter. Pubic facing earned a red circle and its own cheer. I laughed with them so I wouldn't choke. The woman beside me steadied my forearm with 2 fingers. Celebrating the man behind the myth, my daughter-in-law purred. The screen showed me asleep in a paper crown, king of the nap. Tribute peeled into audit. In my head, red key card, missing chair. My name on place cards, but not on plans. Now this, my life diced and served. They smelled momentum and sped up. A picture of my wife and me with a sheet cake, my name spelled right, flashed and vanished before the room could quiet. Me on the floor, mouth open mid-instruction, became when hands-on means hands on hips. The laugh hit the pitch you feel in your teeth. My son clinked his glass. The room leaned in. He didn't say enough. He let it ride. He's good at riding what's already moving his way. Grand finale, the MC promised. A collage filled the screen, my face by decades, stamped boomer, vintage, antique roadshow. Final block, thank you for your service, now please enjoy your seat. The laugh hit the back wall and came back thinner. I tasted metal. My chair scraped when I half stood and thought better of it. Then a hand landed on my shoulder, steady, not apologizing. I turned. An old colleague stood there. Slow smile, clean soap smell, eyes fixed on the stage without flinching. His hand stayed until my breath remembered how. Another joke tried to restart the engine. Founders are like rotary phones, fun to look at. The laugh thinned again. Behind me, a server hissed, careful, to a coworker balancing a tray. Good word. My colleague leaned in. voice meant only for me. "They're planning to take more than your pride," he whispered. The screen flicked to black. The band fumbled for a cue. Someone cleared a throat. The smell of overworked onions drifted from the kitchen. I sat still, the weight of his words settling like snow, soft, relentless, impossible to ignore. The laughter had changed pitch. What had started as tribute had turned roast, then something colder. Even the servers knew it. They moved differently, a quieter kind of efficient. I watched my son signal for another slide, but the MC hesitated. The pause lasted a second too long. A fork clinked. A chair shifted. The room, for the first time all night, wasn't sure what story it was telling. I left before the lights fully came up, before anyone could tilt a head and ask if I needed air. The corridor carried that mountain hush, pine garlands, elevator rails cold to the touch. I rode up alone. My reflection rode with me. The same face I'd shaved since mornings mattered. By the time the doors slid open, the shake in my hand had learned its place. The room was warm, steady, jacket over the chair. Window cracked an inch. The lodge below glowed in the snow like a ship stranded inland. Laughter floated up thin, reluctant to be caught. Her voice found me. "Don't let them mistake your kindness for weakness, my wife." 2 fingers quick on my tie, gentle but firm. I could almost feel the push between my shoulders now, a nudge back into myself. I sat on the bed, thumbed my phone awake. A banner, new photos added. I tapped. A grid appeared. Faces I love, arranged like a brochure. The cover used to be the 5 of us around a cake, her finger half in the frame. Now it was tonight. My daughter-in-law centered, candlelight flattering, where I remember standing, a bouquet. You can crop a man like a weed and plant fragrance in his place. If you weren't there, you'd believe it always looked like that. I scrolled. Skating pond, my arm cut at the elbow, so the shot could breathe. Sled ride, my hat, a blur at the edge. Fireplace group labeled all of us. It wasn't. Old albums wore new names. The day we signed the papers, once handoff, now new chapter, my tag gone. An anniversary dinner, once Lee and now family night. If I hadn't lived those rooms, I might have believed the rewrite. Back to messages. The main thread, renamed Legacy Weekend, stacked previews like marching orders. Timing? Keep it light. A link from my cousin's boy. My name absent. Only the furniture words that move people without naming them. Shift him, seat him, let him. A side chat pinged. Cute label, harmless on the surface. Inside, gallows humor and polite shoes. Phase him out gently. Dignity optics. A clipped roast shot of my profile under a sign. LOL, he still squints like a fax machine. Hearts, laughs, no one said my name. They didn't need to. For the first time all night, I cooled. Not clumsy, not random. A plan, palette, tone, cue words, light, legacy, celebrate. The last months arranged themselves without me. Red key lights, chairs fetched late, jokes sharpening teeth, a calendar alert I didn't set, captions bending story until the old name didn't fit the new frame. I thought of the first lease and the banker who enjoyed saying no. The contractor who stayed late because wind howled through gaps. The night shift, Maria, Donnie, the kid with the fresh tattoo, who brought me a cake in a cardboard box the year money almost ran out. My wife lighting candles, whispering, "Keep the good names safe." She meant people, always people. Resolve doesn't kick doors. It sits, waits, breath evens, shoulders line. Another banner slid cheerful across. Founders farewell, tonight. Say a thing enough times, it cuts a groove. I opened the photo she made me keep local, distrustful of clouds. A field, nowhere special, her hair pulled back. Corners of her mouth tilted up for me, not the lens. I set the phone on the table, let her look at me the way she did when I apologized for being generous. "Don't," her eyes always said. "We'll make more." A thump in the hall, luggage dragged, voices sugar-tired, triumphant. A laugh people use when performance has landed. I pressed my palm against the door. Warm corridor heat bleeding through. Back to the shared media folder. The invite had reached me by accident or momentum. Inside, tidy rows of thumbnails. A notes doc. Open with childhood pic. Keep pace brisk. End with collage. Initials familiar, none mine. Comments on what lands? Under a photo of me at a groundbreaking. Too earnest, trim. Thumbs up beneath it. Not a bruise, a clarity. Her voice again, sharpened this time. Kindness isn't permission. The cut was clean. Another ping. From the planning thread I'd been on back when this trip was sold as togetherness. Maybe they forgot to remove me. Maybe they counted on my silence. Preview. Do we have consensus? I opened it. The thread was a checklist now. Seating, filled, slide deck, filled, tone, adjusted, and under those, a new line waiting. Empty box, plain as receipt. Sometimes the thing you brace for writes its own name. On my screen, a poll appeared. Is he still fit to manage himself? Morning tasted like tin and old coffee, but the snow outside looked new. I shaved slow, buttoned a cedar-scented shirt, told my face to behave. In the lobby, the fire did its job. A bowl of oranges sat like they belonged. I took a pen instead. Silence worked better than speeches. I let it sit. The pocket notebook came out. Cardboard cover, wire that snags if you rush. I used to keep numbers there. Today I kept moments. Key card read, twice. Chair fetched after seating. Joke about remembering plays big. I wrote small, the way you do when you want the day to fit. At breakfast, the host asked again. Party for 6. Like 7 cost extra breath. My name card hid under a pepper shaker. The server with steady eyes slid a chair in place before I spoke. No apology. Just space and a cup that meant it. I wrote, server, real, and felt my shoulders loosen. I listened more than I ate. Oatmeal like good intentions. Bacon that cost someone their break. My son worked a vendor at the far end, voice angled for power. My daughter-in-law praised the lighting, told a cousin, the camera loves this room. Cameras love laughter, even when it bites. A bellboy I'd tipped nodded in passing, not the kind of nod that fishes for another tip. A working crew nod. Sir, he said, without making me older. I didn't write it down. I kept it. The day shuffled on. At the skating pond, the kids stayed in orbit. My granddaughter waved me over to a snow angel that looked like it wanted to leave. The rental clerk said they were out of my size. We can put you on a list, he offered, like my feet were an idea. The bench gave me a decent view. I wrote, wait list exists, only for me, and laughed once, quick, to keep it from settling. In the hall near meeting rooms, the MC rehearsed under his breath. Warm, brisk, keep it moving. His laptop sat on the cart. Same neat desktop. A new folder blinked at me, still labeled new folder, rushing. Trusting memory. I wrote rushing, overconfident. By midday, the bartender slid me a black coffee. On the house. I gave him the look you give when you think someone made a mistake in your favor. You helped my uncle once, he said, naming a warehouse from a decade ago, a winter I still smell in my hands. Kept the lights on. He didn't wait for me to earn it. Just polished a glass, moved on. That one steadied the page. Near the elevators, a man in a wool coat too thin for the mountains smiled the slow smile of remembering. Old board member days, when a good quarter felt like a truce. We disagreed the right way and finished our coffee. You picked a quiet place to get loud, he said. No one invited you, I answered. He raised a scuffed leather folio. Under the radar, which meant I came because it's time, not because I was asked. We didn't hug. He touched 2 fingers to an imaginary brim and drifted toward the far fireplace. I wrote, Allie, here, then closed the notebook so the word could breathe. Staff began treating me like the building's spine. The concierge slid a map across without prompting, tapping the ridgeline, the view you give to people who will care for it. Housekeeping propped my wife's photo upright without moving anything else. The valet laid my coat across a chair like a promise. I walked a hall lined with family portraits, even frames, uneven shoulders. 3 winters ago, I'd been in the center, everyone leaning in. It wasn't the center that mattered. It was the leaning. My son passed, phone to his ear, jaw locked. "We're aligned," he told whoever buys words like that. He gave me the neighborly squint. "All good?" "Already moving." "Fine," I said. The word had gone thin. He glanced at my shoes. "Good traction." Like he was inventorying. He turned the corner. His voice lingered longer than he did. In the game room, a boy tapped a piano with 2 fingers like he was testing a lock. The tune was half remembered. I stayed far enough not to break it. His mother thanked me with a look. I wrote, Patience noticed. The page looked like a ledger not asking for money. Dinner neared. Banquet staff moved with rhythm that came from repetition and dignity. The steady-eyed server corrected a misplaced plate, nudged my card back where it belonged. Someone had tried to slide me 2 seats down. She decided otherwise. I let the chair legs say thanks when they settled. My daughter-in-law floated through the room. Mic, light, flowers. "Keep it celebratory," she told the MC. That word had been lifting all weekend. She checked me like a package. I smiled like a polite customer. She gave me a thumbs up with her eyes, as if I'd fulfilled a checkbox. At coat check, it smelled of wool and snow. My colleague from the night before didn't waste time. "Standing or sitting?" he asked. "For now," I said, "standing." One nod, foreman style. "They've rehearsed," he said, watching the room. "They always do," I answered. He patted my elbow. "The way you pat a machine before you start it." I stayed quiet, watched the cart's cable sag. A cousin flattened the kink with his shoe. Watched the host miscount chairs, twice, before the steady-eyed server fixed it. Watched my son laugh at the far table, touch his glass with 2 fingers like testing temperature. I wrote, "Comfortable in the current." Then beneath, "Currents can be redirected." I remembered an August negotiation, the kind where silence won. We said less, then less again, until the other side heard quiet as a sentence. Sometimes your strongest clause is the one you don't say. By the time the band softened, the room had settled. Steam rose from plates. Knives whispered. Laughter thinned. I closed the notebook, flattened my palms on the cloth. My wife used to do that when she chose listening over pouring. The MC took his post. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor the past and embrace the future." The screen blinked alive. My son lifted his glass. The room followed. My daughter-in-law's smile could sell mirrors. The steady-eyed server brushed the back of my chair. Anchor touch. Across the room, the old board member stood, coat on his arm, folio in hand. He looked my way. Not for permission, for timing. I gave him nothing. Timing works best when it looks relaxed. The MC beamed. The deck waited. He promised, "The moment we've all been waiting for." That's what people say when they need you to believe you asked for this. Heads turned together, neat as corn in wind. I felt the chair under me, the heat of the room, the steady in my chest. I felt her nudge between my shoulders. I didn't reach for the notebook. I didn't reach for the glass. I let my hands be hands. When they called me to the stage for the final handoff, I rose, and the room went still. The mic was still warm from someone else's hand. I didn't raise it high. I let it hover where breath turns into sound, the way you hold a sleeping child, close enough to matter, far enough to breathe. The lights weren't harsh, just honest. Glassware glossed. A dark ring where a cup had rested and moved. Napkin edges wilted from use. My son's smile had flattened to a line. My daughter-in-law's shoulders sat too high, bracing for a punchline I wasn't going to give. "I'm not signing anything tonight," I said. Not loud, not dramatic. "I only want to tell a story." The bandleader set both hands on the keys and didn't play. Forks paused. The room chose to listen. It was a winter that bit, I began. The kind that finds the gap in your sleeve and teaches you where you're thin. The warehouse heat had coughed itself out the week before. The repairman kept promising tomorrow, like a man paying in nickels. A shipment sat in the cold, wrapped in plastic that crackled like ice. Every hour we waited cost money we didn't have. The board had clean ideas. Reschedule, renegotiate, reframe. But the calendar doesn't read memos. It only flips. Faces shifted toward me. A murmur, then still. I told them about Maria, coming in early with a space heater that had already lived 2 lives. Donnie tucking warmers into his boots and grinning. Feet first, boss, brains follow. The Romero boys dragging their own tools because ours were tired. We moved pallets by hand because the forklift hated the cold. Breath became small clouds. Someone laughed just to make steam. Cardboard smelled like toast. Coffee burned on the hot plate. The roll-up door stuttered, then decided to be brave. The board didn't save us that week, I said. People did. Not a scolding, a placement of weight. In the back, faces lifted one by one, like place cards being turned right side up. I let the quiet sit. Quiet does good work. Then the screen shifted. No flourish, no drum roll. Photos began to move like a slow river. Not tonight's glossy edits. Just faces. Grease along a cheekbone. A nick beside a nail. A woman in a hairnet smiling like she knew the punchline. Plain font names. Maria, Donnie, Lucia, Ken. The sound changed. The soft note people make when they recognize themselves, even without having met. I didn't say how the reel appeared. I didn't need to. It belonged here more than the last hour had. The pictures kept coming. Polaroid of our first doc. Scuffed paint from a cruel winter. A birthday cake sliding sideways. A kid in a paper hat the day the school bus stopped by. No captions that bit. Just names and years. Trained laughter lost its footing. Kids leaned forward on elbows until parents touched sleeves with napkins. My old colleague folded his arms, dipped his chin. The posture of ground recognized under new boots. That winter, I said, we shipped on time. A few heads lifted. In our line, on time is church. We broke even by a hair. I slept a little. In spring, we hired 2 more. The room wanted grandeur. I didn't give it. It wasn't heroic. It was work and trust. The screen slipped in a photo of my wife. Not staged, not dressed for it. Laughing the kind of laugh you want to earn. The room softened. I did too. She used to say, keep the good names safe. She meant people, break the names, and the math won't save you. On the screen, a man with oil under his nails lifting a sandwich with both hands, eyes closed as if blessing it. A line leader with a scar curled like a comma across his knuckle. An office manager whose desk plants outlived trends. I could have talked over them. I didn't. Faces always did their own work. I know the new words, I said. Scale, disruption, velocity. I shaped each slow like tools. Use them. But none of them mean a thing if the people who show up don't trust the person holding the keys. My son set his glass down. It left a ring that would show in morning light. My daughter-in-law's smile dimmed to a smaller bulb. The reel caught the night shift. Reflective vests, tired grins, cake balanced on a pallet because boxes had stolen the break room. Balloons sagged. Frosting spelled my name across too little space. I'd felt foolish thanking them then. I felt foolish now. Gratitude is clumsy when it's real. Titles are jackets, I said. They keep you warm until they don't fit. Trust is what lets you take the jacket off and still walk home. The sound in the room shifted. Not applause, not yet. More like chairs adjusting when people change how they're sitting. Is that Grandpa? A child asked, pointing at a photo of me bent over a busted tape gun. Another kid shushed him with judicial seriousness. A woman near the back bowed her head. Not a prayer. A nod to something forgotten, now returned. Legacy isn't a chair, I said. It's a promise. I found my son's face. A promise that the people who built this won't have their names cropped out to make room for flowers. Silence stretched, steady. In the far corner, the steady-eyed server watched the screen instead of the guests, the way you watch family when they don't know you're looking. For a moment, I wanted to defend myself, line up quarters, argue with math, but proof wasn't the point. Memory was. Keeping it open, where trimming couldn't flatter whoever held the mic. Another slide. The night a storm tore the banner loose. We used duct tape and a ladder that should have retired to fix it before dawn trucks rolled by. The tape flashed in the photo like a joke. If you were there, you remembered the wind. If not, it looked planned. I don't need my face on a wall, I said. I need the people who built this to wake up knowing their names are safe. No applause yet. The room breathed. A fork tapped porcelain like a bell. My son rolled his shoulders as if his jacket had shrunk. If you want to know what the company is, I said, walk the floor. Count how many times people say we without meaning marketing. A chuckle tried, then sat down. If the number's high, you're doing the job. If it's low, you're managing a logo. On screen. Dawn. The building in stubborn blue light. A few windows already warm. A truck's taillights fading like embers. No caption, no music, just work waiting. I lowered the mic, listening to the room think. Heads didn't duck for the next joke. Kids stopped fidgeting. My colleague's jaw loosened. A couple with front seats stared into their water as if it spoke. I'm not here to be roasted, I said, letting a small smile live. Anger would have been easy and wrong. I'm here to remember. Remember turned like a key in a lock. For a beat, the building exhaled. Wood stilled in a different way. Flame flickered with less show. Even the band leader shifted, as if stepping out of someone else's tune. I set the mic back. Not flourish, finish. I didn't look for my son. I knew where his eyes had gone. I didn't look for my daughter-in-law. The camera always finds her. I looked at the workers' faces still hanging on the last frame and felt something in me stop bracing. A chair scraped, a glass touched down. A child whispered, "That was real," to no one in particular. It reached me anyway. I'm not signing anything tonight, I repeated, lighter now. Not because I'm holding on, because I'm letting go of what doesn't matter. Silence followed like a full stop. The steady-eyed server brushed the back of my chair. Anchor. My colleague mouthed a quiet yes. My son reached for his glass and missed, found water instead. My daughter-in-law's smile flickered, searching for a place to land. Someone began to clap, then thought better of it. The room hadn't chosen what it was yet. That was fine. It would. I felt my wife's nudge at my shoulders. That's enough. Sit. Let it stand. I turned toward the aisle. At the doorway, an attorney stepped in, slim case in hand. My son blanched, color draining fast. The air shifted, no longer snowlight but courtroom bright. The silence that followed was the loudest sound of the night. The lounge had the kind of quiet you pay for. Thick carpet, leather that sighed, lemons standing in for flowers. Fire glowed behind glass without a sound. The attorney set his slim case on the bar and stayed by the door like a good coat on a hook. Present, not in the way. My son came in fast, the speed of a man who wants an audience and misplaced his lines. My daughter-in-law followed with softened edges, ready for a camera that wasn't there. She closed the door with 2 fingers, as if the room belonged to her. "What was that?" my son said. Not a question. "You ambushed us. In front of everyone." "I told a story," I said. "One that keeps its shape when no one's looking." She smiled without teeth. "There's a way to manage optics, Dad. You made people uncomfortable." "Good," I said. "Comfort's been expensive." He paced, hands to hips, off again. "We plan an evening to honor you, and you." He reached for a word and found air. "You undercut me." I slid my notebook onto the table like a coaster. "No more unchecked access," I said even. No more silence mistaken for consent. She opened her palms. Let's not throw grenades. We can shape the narrative. Joint statement. 3 generations, 1 legacy. We'll post the reel of faces. People love the human angle. They're not angles, I said. They're names. Keep names safe and the narrative takes care of itself. He laughed once, dry. You're overreacting. It was a roast. People do roasts. I turned the notebook and tapped it. Keycard read, twice. Breakfast, chair fetched after seating, jokes about remembering, the slideshow labeled legacy laughs, the private poll about whether I can manage myself, the calendar event you created, founders farewell tonight. His jaw worked. You went through I looked at what you sent me, I said. You forgot to remove me from the list where you choreographed my exit. Her smile thinned. You're reading malice into logistics. I changed captions to be inclusive. All of us performs better than Lee and its engagement. I noticed, I said. Faces cropped, names removed, a bouquet where I'd been standing. Flowers don't argue. The attorney watched the carpet like it had something to add. My son planted both hands on the table and leaned in, as if gravity would help. You made me look small. You did that, I said, as soft as I could afford. You let it ride. Color rose in his face. You want to talk about letting things ride? You retired. You handed me the keys, and now you're mad I'm driving. I'm not mad you're driving, I said. I'm mad you tried to slide me out of the car without saying it out loud. I flipped a page. Your cousin's reel turning me into a punchline. The pubic-facing email circled like homework. The sticker collage. Vintage. Antique roadshow. None of that was clumsy. It was designed. So I'm designing something back. Boundaries. She folded her arms. Meaning? Meaning you don't have access to what you haven't earned, I said. My name, my presence, my accounts, my silence. I nodded at the door. He's here as a witness, not a weapon. What needed doing has been done for days. Her eyes cut to the case and back. You brought a lawyer to a family weekend? I brought a witness to a decision, I said. I wish it hadn't been necessary. He smoothed his jacket like it had insulted him. You're punishing us because you were embarrassed. I'm clarifying, I said. Embarrassment passes. Erasure collects interest. He threw his hands. What does that even mean? It means this, I said, counting without drama. You don't book events in my honor without consent. You don't use my image or name for company material or family campaigns without written permission. You don't bill your togetherness to my generosity as cover for cutting me out of the picture, and you don't speak about me as if I'm not in the room when I am. She blinked. You're talking like a press release. I'm talking like a promise, I said. To myself. He sat at last, as if discovering the floor wouldn't rise to meet him. You can't just turn things off. A flick toward the case. You're not thinking clearly. Clearer than I have in a year, I said. Want times? I scrolled. 7:04 p.m. You send keep it light in the side chat. 7:22. The poll goes live. Is he still fit to manage himself? 7:31. The Legacy Laughs folder gets its last edit. I was already seated when you finished rewriting the night. She exhaled through her nose, counting options. Fine. You felt hurt. We can handle that. Brunch tomorrow, kids do cards, you give a closing toast, we post a photo, it lands. Everybody wins. Everybody who? I asked. The family, she said, brightening the word like a flashlight. The family includes the people whose names are on that reel, I said. They're getting what I used to call help. You called it optics. I'm done confusing the two. His chair creaked. What did you do? I told the truth in a room, I said. Before that, I told it to paper. I set my palm on the notebook. Funds I used to dribble into family fires are redirected. Good hands, scholarships, boots, paid time off that doesn't get docked, places that keep names safe. I let the next line stand on both feet. You won't be steward of what you don't value. He stared like struggling to see through tinted glass. You can't cut me out of what? I asked. My wallet, my calendar, my door code? I shook my head. You mistook proximity for entitlement. That's on me too. I taught you generosity and forgot its limits. He raked a hand through his hair the way he did at 10 when math wouldn't sit still. This is vindictive. This is precise, I said. Vindictive is loud. I'm being clear. I turned to her. You're excellent at making things look nice, not as good at making them true. This weekend was your build, a man ready to step aside from his own life, proved by captions, jokes, chairs. I brought a story that outlived your file names. She straightened. We did this to protect you, she tried. That poll, is he fit, was about care. If something happened, we need a plan. If something happens, I have a plan, I said. You're not in it. She flinched, small. You'd cut out your own grandchildren? I'm not cutting out children, I said. I'm cutting out middlemen. I let it sit. They'll be fine. That's what the world is for when grown-ups stop treating it like a mirror. His palm hit the chair arm. Too loud for this room, not loud enough to matter. You're going to regret this. I already regret things, I said. Not teaching you the difference between love and lease. Not saying no sooner. Not stopping the first crop in a photo and naming it. I nodded toward the case. I'm not adding to the list. He pointed at the attorney. So you marched in with paperwork to humiliate me? He's here to mark the line you don't see, I said. There are letters, not threats. Letters. They say what I just said, with better grammar. Copies for you, so everyone reads the same page. Her voice went velvet over a bruise. We can spin this. You don't want to be the patriarch who turns on his own. The board won't like. The board likes numbers that tell the truth, I said. They saw a reel tonight that didn't insult their intelligence. Try that. He stared like he needed me to blink first to remember how. You think people take your side because you told a story about hand warmers? They'll take their own side, I said. Maybe for the first time in a while. He leaned back, reaching for casual, landing on tired. So what now? You walk away? You blacklist us from your charity? You lock your doors? I open other ones, I said. And I stop pretending you're entitled to keys that aren't yours. She shifted to salvage. Agree to a truce statement. United in stewarding the brand. We post the Dawn Building photo. You add a line about trust, and we move on. I smiled, small and true. We are moving on. Just not together the way you want. He shot to his feet so fast the chair yelped. You wouldn't dare! The son spits. The father answers, I already did. The attorney clicked open the case. Paper slid out neatly, not angrily. Envelopes, names spelled correctly. He laid them on the table like plates. What is this? My son asked, though he knew. Copies, I said. Clarity travels better on paper. She tore hers open, scanned, then looked up with a smile too bright for the room. You wouldn't actually file. I already filed, I said. The board gets their copy in the morning. So do the foundations. So does HR. My son's jaw set. You're burning bridges. I'm marking lanes, I said. Bridges carry weight better when lanes are painted. He looked at the attorney. How much is he paying you to ruin a family? The attorney didn't rise. I'm here because he asked me to witness his boundary, he said, voice even. Boundaries prevent ruin. They don't cause it. Silence pooled. The fire hummed behind glass. Somewhere down the hall, a cartwheel squeaked and then remembered how to roll. My daughter-in-law gathered herself. We'll release a statement first thing, calm the noise. You manage your noise, I said. I'll manage my name. The lemons on the table looked like staged suns. The leather sighed again. My son stared at the envelopes, then at me, as if one of us might blink into an easier version of the night. Last chance, he said. For what? I asked. To be reasonable. I'm being reasonable, I said. And I'm done being convenient. He held my gaze a heartbeat longer, then looked away first. The breath he let out sounded like defeat trying to pass for composure. I closed the notebook. The attorney closed the case. The door latch made a clean, adult sound. On our way out, my daughter-in-law tried one more angle. Tomorrow at brunch. Pose with the kids. It'll help. It'll help you, I said. The kids don't need a pose. They need names that stay. I opened the door. The hallway air felt colder, cleaner. The lounge lights softened behind us like a stage closing its own curtain. My son didn't follow. He sank into a chair meant for success and stared at papers meant for truth. I walked back toward the noise of real plates and real people, the attorney a half step behind. The night had stopped performing. That was enough. The lounge door clicked behind us like a lid settling. I stood in the hallway a beat, let the draft cool my face. The attorney nodded once and stayed back. No shadow, no chaperone, just a witness finally standing in the right place. When I stepped toward the banquet again, the carpet felt thicker under my shoes. Word moves like water in a place like this, under doors, around corners. The room had shifted. People stayed in their seats, but the air had changed sides. Space opened around the front tables the way it does when a joke stops landing. A couple who'd laughed loudest studied their napkins. Along the far wall, the old colleague stood easy, arms crossed, the posture of a man who knows a storm and doesn't need to name it. My daughter-in-law pushed a smile across the room like a broom. It didn't move dust, it only made lines. My son hovered a half step behind her, wearing the look of a man told the trick still works if he believes harder. At the bar, the bartender rolled his sleeves the way men do when it's time to go through something, not around it. The server with steady eyes set a glass by my hand. "You good?" she asked under the hum of plates. "I am," I said. She gave a small nod, the kind you share when the calendar finally catches up to the truth. A child ran into my leg and stopped herself with 2 hands. "Grandpa," she whispered, like the word had turned fragile. I bent. My back protested, and then remembered its job. "Are you mad?" she asked. My grandson hovered behind her, watching my face the way he watches a scoreboard when it's close. "I'm here," I said, and let them hear the weight of it. "And I'm listening." They pulled me toward the edge where the candles didn't try as hard. The music thinned to something polite. "Why were they laughing?" my grandson asked. Not angry, not scared, just clean curiosity. "Sometimes grown-ups don't know how to carry a story," I said. "They make jokes so they don't drop it. He worked on that like a piece of candy. But you didn't laugh." "I'm allowed to keep the parts of me that shouldn't be laughed at," I said. "That's called a boundary." My granddaughter glanced at my hands. "You were shaking." "I was," I said. "Being brave doesn't keep your hands still. It keeps your voice the size it should be." I touched her shoulder. "And kindness isn't the same as letting people do whatever they want." Chairs sighed, people standing and sitting without going anywhere. A man whose first warehouse door I'd helped rehang years ago came near and stopped at a decent distance, hat in his hand from habit, not theater. "Evening," he said. No speech, no borrowed apology. Enough. I shook his hand. His palm was rough with a life I still recognized. At a corner table, the couple who'd coached the MC now wished the floor would open. One offered my daughter-in-law a joke to borrow. It fell between her words. She tried again with a compliment shaped like a truce. The room didn't buy. Charm only works when there aren't witnesses. My son tried the practical voice. "Folks," he called, and forks paused midair. "Let's reset. Tonight is about celebrating a transition." He rolled the word like marble in a cup. "We're united, family and company. You saw the real, that's who we are." From the back, we saw who we were, not loud, clear. My son blinked like he hadn't planned for stray sentences. He tried a boardroom smile. The room gave him nothing to hook it to. Dad, he said, turning the syllable into a mic. Why don't you say a few words to close it out? We'll— A flick of fingers toward the screen. End on a high note. The polite man inside me stood up. I asked him to sit. The bandleader read the moment and stayed quiet. The screen still held the building at dawn, taillights like embers. No caption. I didn't climb the stage. I stayed where the carpet had learned what had shifted. I'll say this, I began, and the room turned toward it. Thank you for coming. Start simple. You wipe the counter before you cut the bread. What you saw, the faces, the hands, that's the center of what we do. I found the workers, guests, staff, both, who had stopped pretending not to listen. If you came to laugh at me, that's your evening. If you came to remember them, that's our work. A ripple moved through the tables. Not applause, not pushback, more like settling. The old colleague nodded once, private, like a man counting and finding the number he hoped for. My daughter-in-law tried again, softer. And we're all so grateful. Gratitude is a verb, I said, without looking at her. It does. It doesn't crop. A few heads dipped, the way you do when a truth walks past and finds your name. My son's color faded to the shade you get when pulse outruns breath. You've made yourself very clear, he said, clipped. We'll discuss the funding changes privately. He placed a hand on my shoulder in a gesture designed for cameras that weren't there. His fingers were steady. That worried me more than shouting would have. This is private enough, I said. People should know what story they're buying when they show up for a name. I turned to the room because I meant them. Legacy isn't a cake sliced by seniority. It's trust. It flows where it's honored. A clean pause, silver on plates, the fire working, a kid by the door whispering too loud. The bartender set water beside my hand like an anchor. I drank because I was thirsty. A woman dressed for an evening that had promised something else stepped close without crowding. My dad was a machinist, she said. He'd have liked that reel. She didn't ask for anything. She gave me that and returned to her table. That's how respect travels when it isn't chained to a spotlight. The server with steady eyes took a half step forward. We have coffee in the foyer, she told the room, voice even, as if coffee could be a bridge. It often is. People moved, not away, but differently. Circles reopened, angles changed. Guests edged from my son and daughter-in-law the way tide slides off stones and leaves them clean. By the door, the old board member talked with the attorney the way men do when they already know and can enjoy saying it slow. No paper, no pointing, just words that don't need volume. My grandson returned with a napkin folded into a square. He'd drawn 3 stick figures holding a long rectangle with wheels. The forklift, he said, proud enough to undo me. The forks looked like arms reaching, not grabbing. It needs names. I wrote Maria and Donnie and Romero along the rails, my hand steadier than it had been all night. Can I show Mom? He asked. Show anyone who will see, I said. Across the room, my daughter-in-law tried to catch the MC's eye for a rescue. He stared at his laptop like it had told a secret, and he was deciding whether to forgive it. My son worked the clusters, offering a version of the night people had stopped buying. He reached the couple who'd nodded toward the board earlier. They arranged their faces into politeness, and then, when he turned away, sent me an apology with their eyes. The music tried a return. Brushes, not horns. People let it lay under the talk like a rug. The smell of coffee drifted in. The honest kind, not lobby pot. A man from shipping who'd made manager last year shook my hand with both of his and left a sentence sturdy as lumber. We're still here. I know, I said. That's why it's going to be okay. Some younger guests hovered by my kids, unsure whether to defect or hold the line they'd been taught. I didn't rescue them. People remember who held the door, but they remember longer who opened it themselves. I passed the microphone without touching it, the way you walk by an old machine to hear if it's still telling the truth. Thank you for giving the reel the respect it deserved, I said. If you take anything home, Let it be this: we are the sum of the names we keep safe. I looked to the workers, the staff, the ones who lifted without being asked or seen. Legacy will flow where it isn't asked to beg. No applause. A shared breath. Chairs adjusted to a new posture. Outside, snow started again. Slow, committed flakes. My son drifted back into the center, voice sharpened. There you have it, he told the room, lifting his glass high. A founder's blessing, a family united. Tonight proves the torch is passed. My daughter-in-law slid beside him, her hand raised as if sealing a deal. For a breath, it looked like they'd won the room back. A few claps stumbled up, polite and thin. Then the attorney stepped forward, slim case under his arm. His voice carried steady as steel. Per the board's directive, stewardship reverts to the founder, effective immediately. The clapping stopped like glass dropped. My son's glass hung mid-air, then sank. My daughter-in-law's smile cracked, searching for ground that wasn't there. The victory they tried to script collapsed before it reached its second act. The attorney stepped close enough to hear and no closer. "If you're ready," he said. He didn't mean a toast. What I felt wasn't triumph or payback. It was alignment, like a chair that stops wobbling when you find the short leg and slide in the right shim. I touched my granddaughter's head as she ran past with a cookie like a saucer. I nodded to the server with steady eyes. I shook the hand of the man whose door we rehung at midnight with a flashlight in our teeth. Then I let the room hold itself up. My phone, face down on linen, buzzed once. Then again. I turned it over, not to make a point, just to see what wanted me now that I'd given myself back to myself. A message from inside the company waited on the lock screen. "The board is ready when you are." Morning settles in my study like an old friend. Thin sun on the rug, the radiator humming its low promise. Coffee steam curls into the light, her photograph resting on the desk where my hands remember it. Messages arrive. Apologies braided with excuses, desperation dressed as courtesy. I answer the few that might heal, and let the rest pass like weather. The house feels square again, doors plumb, nameplates honest. I open a window a thumb's width and listen as snow hushes the street, covering tracks without pretending they were never there. A clock ticks the way truth does, steady, unfancy enough. When the bell rings, I already know which grandchild has come alone, and I wonder if, one day, his father might too. Have you ever felt pushed aside by the very people who should have stood with you? Or have you tried to mend a distance with your own children? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd like to hear your stories. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter in these journeys, where family, memory, and truth always find their way back into the light.